This Steve Jones Show podcast is now loading. The Steve Jones Show podcast is presented by Sunbury Motor Company, Purdy Insurance, Brewers Outlet, and NIL Game Changers. Bringing you an in-depth look at Penn State sports and more. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. The Steve Jones Show is presented by Purdy Insurance, Brewers Outlet, NIL Game Changers, and Sunbury Motor Company. Now from the Sunbury Motor Studio, here's Steve Jones.
Happy Tuesday, everybody. Hope you enjoyed your Memorial Day weekend. I know we did. Opening half hour of the show brought to you by Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury, Sunbury Motors Kia. Routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf and online at sunburymotors.com. Ford, Kia, Hyundai, best in new inventory, great pre-owned inventory with the Sunbury Motors guarantee. Terrific service department that backs it up, routine to difficult, at Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury, Sunbury Motors Kia. Routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf and online at sunburymotors.com. Always great to talk with Adam Rittenberg from ESPN. Adam, first of all, I hope you're doing really well.
Yeah, great to be on with you, Steve. Hope it's the same for you.
Yeah. Interesting times, but we'll at least start out with something on a field. You did a terrific piece on Jordan Faison in Notre Dame, and Notre Dame just won the lacrosse national championship. What did you learn about a guy that has done so well at two sports at this level?
Well, I think it's just a credit to him. He's obviously a tremendous natural athlete, but to be able to juggle both of those sports, especially at a program like Notre Dame that wants to win championships and now has won 2 national championships in a row in lacrosse, and obviously has the great aspirations in football. As a freshman, I mean, he's a true freshman on campus, and again, had a football season that even he didn't really envision, having such a big role there at the end at wide receiver, and then having to pivot right away to lacrosse, where that was where he was a top 50 recruit and a guy that was expected to contribute, but you're still starting for a team that won a national title and is defending that title with a lot of veteran players, scoring goals in the national championship game. So and he was a bit of an underdog in the sense that grew up in Florida, which is not the hottest lacrosse area. I think it could be in the future, but had to go to Long Island to play club lacrosse in the summers, and then was an underdog in football, in the sense that he came to Notre Dame as a walk-on, and they really did not want to play him last year because it was going to count against the scholarship limit, and they just had no choice, partly because of injury, but in large part because of what he was able to do in impressing them in practice. So excited to see where his career goes, and his younger brother, Dylan, is going to try to do the same thing, play both football and lacrosse. He's already committed for football, and will be playing lacrosse as well for Notre Dame.
All right, this is going to be the new era. Claudia Wilkins still has to put her stamp of approval on the settlement. What does this do for athletic departments financially? Because let's face it, in the 3 to 5 year budget projections that they may have even done 6 months ago, $20 to $22 million per year was not in there.
Right, and it's going to be different for each department, and certainly different league to league in terms of how you address this, and what it means for football and basketball, but also what it means for some of the other sports. There's still a Title IX component that seems to be a little bit fuzzy. Everyone's kind of wondering what happens to collectives now in the NIL. I don't think that's going to change dramatically because of this settlement, because this is a revenue sharing component. It's not a technically NIL portion of this, although it just means more money is going to go to the athletes. But the distribution of those funds are also going to be interesting. Does it go equally throughout all athletes, throughout all football and basketball teams? There's certainly a lot of wiggle room, it seems like, in there, and a lot of questions still to be answered. But again, if you're a Big Ten athletic director, for example, and you weren't anticipating this, you weren't doing your job. This has been coming now for at least a year, and I just think that all these departments have to be ready for the financial realities going forward and have to prioritize what really matters to them, or shift priorities in some cases. So it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out, not just locally there in Penn State, but throughout the league and also from conference to conference.
Well, it also plays out differently at Oregon and Washington. They don't get as much of the cut of the television contract as everybody else does along the way. So what about the possibility of private equity getting involved?
Right. Well, it certainly seems like that is something that schools are looking at and likely will have some partnerships there. I think it's a bit of a slippery slope if you just pay attention to some of the areas that private equity has gotten involved with and some of the damage that's been done. So I think it's something that makes people uncomfortable. But again, this is an uncomfortable time from a financial reality standpoint, especially, let's face it, look at what's happened to college athletics in the last 30 years. Facilities have boomed, staffs have boomed. Everybody's increasing. How do you continue to do that or even sustain at a certain level financially with now this new line item that's going to be massive going to the athletes coming out of your budget? So it doesn't surprise me that schools are looking at this as a possibility. I just think you also have to pay attention to what's happened with some of the other ventures that private equity has gotten involved with.
Yeah, exactly. Now, I know, for example, I think it's Redbird. They're involved with AC Milan, the Red Sox, the Penguins, and they claim they want to get involved with 5 to 10 prominent programs along the way. You and I both know that some of those are going to be Big Ten programs. And by the way, Redbird's associated with LeBron James. He has a piece of it as well. What do private equity firms expect? I mean, that's what I want to know, because if you and I are running a business, don't we want rate on return?
No doubt. And this is, again, maybe a larger scale way of looking at this versus NIL, when, you would hear things from coaches like, I have to play this guy or else. Because someone has invested their money in their NIL deal. Now it's going to be from a programmatic standpoint. If things aren't being done a certain way, what type of consequences will there be? What impact will there be on the coaching staff or the head coach in some cases, or just how they approach the goal, a very competitive goal of trying to win conference championships and being in the playoff and national championships and so forth. So. Yeah, it's not like they're just going to sit in the background and give up their money and not have any sort of influence. And so, again, I think it's why everybody has to assess what's best for them. It's so interesting. You mentioned the Big Ten, Steve, and I was talking with Troy Dannon in his office, the new athletic director in Nebraska, back in April, and he was very open about the fact that he believes that revenue and just how it's going to be distributed is going to change. This league, as you know, for many, many years has prided itself on sharing revenue equally. Mm-hmm. Troy's quote to me was, it's going to be more of an eat what you kill mentality. And we saw that with the college football playoff revenue distribution, and he thinks it's going to be that way even within conferences like the Big Ten and the SEC. So we're just in a very different place now, and people wonder, is this just all going to lead to a smaller group of teams breaking off into their own deal? And it might, because there's only some teams, not all teams, that can really compete financially at the level that we're seeming to head to now.
Which then will bring up my next question on collective bargaining. For one thing, if you want a collective bargain, who do you collective bargain with? The players would have to decide who's representing them, correct?
Well, right, and I mean that's been still the line in the sand, if there is one, that they are not employees at this point. And I know Greg Sankey, the SEC commissioner, addressed that last night at their spring meetings, that he does not sense an appetite for athletes to become employees, and certainly that's what the NCAA's position has been and continues to be, even though obviously its position on many things has changed dramatically here in the last few years. So, the collective bargaining element is a good question, but until there's sort of this widespread embracing of employment, I don't know if we're quite there yet.
Let's bring up Tony Petitti here. He has a different background than other Big Ten commissioners along the way. What do you see in his background that you think would allow him to help schools navigate this?
Well, he's certainly been part of professional sports for a long time. As had Kevin Warren, his predecessor, spent most of his career in the NFL. Tony, came directly from MLB, and I think there are some elements of that experience that can certainly help inform him as he met with the Big Ten presidents and athletic directors and coaches last week. They had a massive meeting out in Southern California. Interested to talk to some of the folks coming out of that in terms of what they gleaned, because I think so far, other than the Michigan situation, I think Tony's received pretty good reviews as far as how he communicates and how he addresses some of these bigger problems, or challenges, I should say. But I think, it's coming from the television world, also coming from the MLB world, those experiences should at least give him a pretty good knowledge of how he needs to talk to these folks, and also how he needs to maybe change their positions on certain areas to maybe conform with the realities that the league and all these schools are facing in the future.
How anxious are you to get back to writing about athletes and about games?
Yeah, I mean, I still enjoy that part of it. I kind of dabble in this area, but the crux of my job is still very much about players and teams and projecting and talking to coaches. And so, I think everyone thinks like everything's changed for every reporter. It hasn't really changed as much for me, which I'm okay with. You and I have talked for many years about projecting out for the season, and I'm still looking forward to doing that. And it's obviously just a lot of the things away from the field have been notable here lately.
Well, it's interesting. People ask me about it, same thing, and I said, look, I sit there with Jack Ham or Dick Girardi in basketball, and whomever's out there, that's who I talk about. How they got there. I'm not going to give. That's not my job. My job is to tell you what the time and the score is.
Right, and I think it's important to remind people of that. Now, it's important to obviously track the movement. And I'm doing my future power ranking series right now, where I look out 3 years in advance, which is kind of a futile exercise because things change so much. But you do the best with the information that you have, and who's on the roster right now, who have teams added through the portal, how are they doing in recruiting? The next few weeks are significant. I know a number of your listeners follow recruiting closely. You're going to see some movement in recruiting in terms of commitments for the upcoming year. So it's harder than ever to get a sense of what rosters are going to look like. But we're also nearing the point now, as June is right around the corner, that most of these rosters have taken shape for the 2024 season at least. And then what happens after that, as we know, will be very, very fluid.
Yes, I do a lot of off-season pre-work. Yep. They're finally stabilizing enough I can finish the job on the pre-work part of it. When people talk to you, what do they like about college sports right now? And when they talk to you, what part concerns them? Just people talking to you.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I did a podcast last week with Doug Maurice, our guy who covers Ohio State and does national work, and he had gone through a number of these different areas with polls he put out there, and really said, and this is, I think, consistent with what I hear. I think people are generally excited about the college football playoff and the fact that more teams are going to have a chance later into the season. And there's just greater opportunity to compete for a national championship, and campus sites. I think everyone's excited about that, and people are excited about the schedules generally getting better. I mean, one of the I think pluses of realignment is that you're going to have more Saturdays where there are 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 truly national games versus maybe 1 or 2, or some cases 0. So I think scheduling is something that people are excited about. I think it's hard, for fans who have followed the sport for decades and decades to embrace the movement, the player movement. I think maybe more so than necessarily the money being earned. I don't think the fact that players are making money bothers people as much as the constant chaos around rosters and players transferring 2 or 3 times in the off season or committing to 2 or 3 schools before they settle on where they're actually going. And that's something that I don't know if ever will be truly embraced. And until we go to maybe a full-on employment model, to your earlier question, I know for a fact that coaches that I talk to, they may never say this on the record, but they would prefer a system where there's clarity, just like any sport, on how long you're going to be on my team. So if you and I agree that you want to bet on yourself and sign a 1-year deal, that we both realize at the end of that deal you're probably going to go in the portal or maybe sign another 1-year deal with me or go to the NFL, that's fine. But if we also agree that you're going to play 2 or 3 years, that gives me a sense of what my roster is going to look like. It gives you a sense of security. I think that's ultimately where we need to be, at least in college football, because this current offseason, whether it's fans, whether it's coaches, nobody really enjoys what's happening right now from a personnel standpoint in the sport.
Right. Agreed. Finally, when they're done with the Beaver Stadium renovation, which will be August of 2027, how anxious are you to sit in a press box at Beaver Stadium that's different than the one you've been sitting in?
It's the last one, Steve. And you go around the league and around the country. I mean, it's not the last one, but in terms of, the truly premier programs of the sport, they've all done their press box renovations. And I know that the listeners and the readers don't care that much about where we are, but it will certainly be welcomed when it's a great view. It's still a great view. It's a great atmosphere. I love coming to Happy Valley, but I'll love it even more with a modern press box.
Jimmy Kennedy, which you recall, played defensive tackle, was an All-American here. It was like 2002 or something like that, and we're sitting on the field. And he looks up at the press box. He says, this place is pretty nice, but that's kind of ratty up there. So I was like, okay, thanks. Oh, hey, Adam, always a pleasure. Thanks so much. Appreciate you.
Yeah, I appreciate you too, Steve. Thanks for having me on.
Adam Rittenberg, ESPN. We will come back with more in a moment as we continue on News Radio 1070 WKOK, brought to you by Sunbury Motors.
When car repairs get difficult.
Well, I just don't know.
Me neither.
We get good. Sunbury Motors. More than quality new and used cars, Sunbury Motors specializes in complicated auto repair diagnosis. They can handle intricate repairs and even complete auto body with service open Monday through Friday, 7 till 4. And Sunbury Motors has made simple repairs easy. Maintaining your vehicle is necessary. Finding the time to do it is difficult. Welcome to Sunbury Motors Quick Lane. Just walk in or call ahead. Relax in their remodeled waiting room with Wi-Fi, beverages, and snacks. While Sunbury Motors factory-trained techs take care of your oil change, tire alignments, brakes, and inspections. Quick Lane, 6:30 to 6, Monday through Friday, Saturday, 6:30 till 2. Sunbury Motors, Ford and Hyundai, North 4th Street, Sunbury. And Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf. We take the out of auto repair.
Spring has sprung, and it's time to dust off those insurance policies. For over 100 years, the Purdy Insurance Agency has been protecting families and businesses of the greater Susquehanna Valley and beyond. With the experience of our trained and knowledgeable staff, you can rest assured that your needs will be evaluated and met by some of the industry's best representatives. No matter what your insurance needs are, call Purdy Insurance today at 570-286-5855 or visit our website at purdyinsurance.com to see what we can do for you.